Newcomb Construction is a family-owned design-build general contractor. We work using the concrete tilt-up method. We cast our own concrete wall panels on the job site, and then we tilt them up. What I really love about our job is working with the clients. They strategize and dream for their own company. We're part of it.
I'm Paul Fanlin of the Capital Times, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to the 5th edition of our Capital Times Power Hour, where Wisconsin CEOs speak. For months, we've been looking forward to this conversation with John Pfeifer, President and CEO of the Oshkosh Corporation, which is one of 8 Wisconsin companies in the Fortune 500. You can read more about John and our moderator, Mark Richardson, but in the interest of time, since we're a little bit late, I won't elaborate. Oshkosh makes many things and is a cutting-edge technology company, but one of the things I think will come up in this conversation is they sold the city of Madison, or a subsidiary did, its first electric fire truck. So for those of you who are new to Power Hour, we try to bring in this event the most important CEOs from across Wisconsin to help us better understand the breadth and depth of Wisconsin's business ecosystem. Our previous speakers have come from Waukesha, De Pere, Milwaukee, and Janesville. I'd like to take just a second to thank our major sponsors, all of our sponsors, but the UBS, the Burrish Group, and Newcomb Construction. And again, special thanks to John Pfeifer for making time to visit with us today. So Mark, welcome, John, and take it away, please. Please welcome them.
Should have been ready for that. Okay. Test, check, check. We good? All right. Thanks for hanging in there, folks. Is it the Chinese proverb, or maybe it's a curse? May you live in interesting times. We live in interesting times, and so I want to start by thanking John and his team from Oshkosh for being here and being our guest this morning. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Sorry we're starting a little bit late.
No worries, no worries.
Okay.
When we saw the setup today, we thought, we might not be right on schedule. For those of you who have questions for John, do write them down on those notepads, and someone will come and scoop them up as we get towards the end of the conversation, and we'll get as many of them posed as we can. How's that? Good? All right. So unfortunately, we had some folks, protesting outside this morning, but, let me be the first to say welcome to Madison from the folks in this room.
I'm always happy to be in Madison. I've been here many, many times.
Good, good. We're glad to have you back. So why don't, for the folks that don't know too much about Oshkosh Corporation, can you tell us a little bit about the history and what you guys make?
Yeah, let me kind of give you a brief intro to the company. Ostensibly, there's kind of the what you do and there's the why you do it. And the what we do is interesting, particularly if you're a boy, because we make a lot of specialty vehicles and equipment. We're one of the largest manufacturers of construction equipment in the world. We're the largest manufacturer of fire trucks in the world. There's 15 or more end markets that we serve. So that's kind of interesting, but the why we do it is what really unifies us, and what I think is the most interesting thing about us. That serves to our purpose. I mean, we see ourselves, we've been in business for 106 years. We're in business to serve people in our communities who are doing the toughest work that there is to do. And it's our job, and we know it's our job. We've got to keep those people safe. We want them to return home to their families. We got to keep them productive. Of course, we need to continue to drive productivity. And that's the essence of what we do. It's what we're about. It's about people. Yeah. It's about millions of people that use our products and really helping them be safe and productive, make it easy for them to do their work, not hard for them to do their work. Yeah. And that can be Those heroes that we serve are everyone from soldiers and firefighters to people who are working at great height to people that you and I see all the time when we're at an airport who are working on the tarmac of an airport. All those vehicles and all that equipment is now part of what we do. And we think that's a very powerful purpose, and we're all about people. The culture of the company, we say people first. We got to take care of those people we're serving, and we got to take care of the people inside the company and have an environment of inclusiveness where we can make the best decisions we possibly can make to serve those people. And I don't want to go on too long. The only other thing I'll say that's really, I think, interesting about our company, I talked about us being in business for 106 years. We're an industrial company, and we get lumped in on Wall Street with the industrial companies, and that's appropriate. We are an industrial company, but we're just as much of a technology company today. I mean, we have an enormous amount of engineering capability, technological capability, and that's exciting because that enables us to serve that purpose better now than we've ever been able to do in the last 106 years.
Yeah, no, that's great. And for those who think you're sort of a one-trick pony, nothing could be farther from the truth.
Yeah.
The more research I did, the more impressed I was with the different areas of business that you're in. Like you said, 106 years old. You're there with the Harleys and the Findorfs and the Kohlers, right? For oldest companies in Wisconsin. What was the first thing the company built? What was its claim to fame?
The company was founded on four-wheel drive technology.
Okay.
By Bernard Mosling and William Besserdich, and they tried their best to sell their technology to the automotive companies of the time and the truck companies of the time, and they couldn't do it, so they started out on their own, and they were one of those small innovative companies back in 1917 that actually, today we call those startup companies.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So they were a startup back in 1917. Nobody would buy their technology. They went out on their own. They developed superior four-wheel drive technology. And we today are actively engaged in venture capital. Oshkosh Corporation is.
Yeah.
So we have such we work with Silicon Valley companies, and we invest in startups that we think have technology that's really interesting, and we want to help them along.
Yeah.
So we kind of still have that going on.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you guys are a 106-year-old startup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to look at us.
That works. That's a good story. So that was sort of the beginning, right? That was the then.
Yeah.
So now, you've made some strategic acquisitions in more recent years.
Right.
What are some of the newest products that have been brought into the fold?
We, when we look at the world, we see our core as being able to design and develop purpose-built vehicles and equipment to enable people to get their jobs done safely, productively, and intuitively. So I said purpose-built, and purpose-built means that we design a vehicle to do something that is we don't make commercial chassis. That's not our business. We design a fire truck or an aerial work platform that allows somebody to work at 150 feet in the air productively and safely, or an airport vehicle, excuse me, now that moves a large airplane around a tarmac. So when we look at the world, we see opportunities by where do we see substandard solutions in a market. And we think that with our purpose-built engineering capability and our technological capability, we can do a purpose-built vehicle better than the current solution in the market.
Yeah.
And we bought a company called Aerotech. Aerotech's the leader in airport ground service equipment. So when you see all those vehicles on a commercial airport, that's what we do now, and it's perfectly in line with our company. They're vehicles that are heavy duty, difficult to design, difficult to electrify, but we will electrify them. And if you look at another example of how we look at continued growth is the Postal Service. We saw the Postal Service using a substandard solution to deliver mail 6 days a week, and a solution that was not cut out for modern mail delivery. The vehicle that they have been using up until now is designed to deliver mail and catalogs, and it was designed 30 or 40 years ago.
Yeah.
and the post office needs e-commerce package delivery. That's how they need to get themselves healthy.
Right.
So we designed a purpose-built vehicle thinking about the mail carrier, thinking about everything that they do at every minute of the day and what's going to help them be most productive in delivering modern mail, and that's what we designed for them. You'll start seeing those hit the streets next year.
Okay, very cool. So I spent quite a bit of time on your website. Great website, by the way. Clearly, you look at it as an investment, not an expense, because you guys, it's really laid out well. It tells the story. But one of the things that's quoted there is, born in Wisconsin, making a difference around the world.
Yeah.
And so why don't you tell us a little bit about, when you say making a difference around the world, how many countries are you operating in? You know, how many employees do you have sort of that aren't in Oshkosh?
Oh, well, we have 18,000 people in 170 or so operations around the world. The heaviest concentration of operations that we have are here in the state of Wisconsin. We do a lot of R&D in Wisconsin. We have multiple R&D centers in this state, and we got a lot of manufacturing plants in Wisconsin, from Oshkosh to Appleton to distribution centers through Milwaukee. So the heaviest concentration is in Wisconsin, but we've got operations in Minnesota and Pennsylvania and Maryland and Florida and China and France and the UK and Italy, all over the place to serve markets that are important to us.
So you're truly a global company. So I was reading that Oshkosh has been named one of the world's most ethical companies for 8 straight years. So obviously, first of all, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. That's part of our value system.
And I want to talk about those core values because it's true. It seems that it's really how you live it, right? How you go to work. So what goes into that recognition? What kind of criteria are there that says, hey, Oshkosh is doing great things everywhere they are?
Well, I mean, I'll just talk about why the world's most ethical is so important to us. Because I talked about we're a people-first company. You have to put, people are the most important thing in any organization. And you have to have a strong culture that promotes people and promotes inclusiveness and promotes the well-being and the advancement of people, both customers and people in our company. And I don't think you can do that without having a really transparent, ethical organization. Because that's, I mean, if I'm no different from anybody else. When I work in an organization, I want to know I can trust it. I want to know I can trust the decision-making that happens within it. And I think if you can't have that, you're really going to have a hard time promoting a strong culture. So we work really hard on ethics and on being transparent. And I'll tell you, you know, we've all seen it, right? Every company in the world has something in their value system about ethics. I promise you, I hate to name names, but I'll name names, right? It wouldn't be interesting if I didn't. I promise you that Volkswagen had an ethical statement about their value system hanging on the walls in this gigantic corporation.
For sure.
Yet they still engaged in the most egregious emissions scandal in the history of industry. So it doesn't matter what you put up on the wall.
You got to live it.
It matters what people live. And when you see somebody that's not living an ethical, up to our ethical value, you have to address it immediately. And when you do that, you promote an ethical culture. That's what we try to do.
That's awesome, because you're right. Everybody's got a mission statement. Everybody's got their core values, but not everybody is. You mentioned transparent. I was looking at diversity and inclusion on your site, and it was clear to me. I see a lot of statements. And I see a lot of, these are our goals. But I don't see a lot of companies be as transparent about their progress towards their goals.
Yeah.
So you've got, for those of you who haven't seen their site, you got to go check it out. You've got goals that are attached to hiring,
Yeah.
women, persons of color,
Yeah.
and I forget which year it was. I want to say 26 maybe. That's up there.
2025.
Okay, 25,
Yeah.
and then you've got right below it, you've got where you are in progress to those
Yeah.
goals. Tell me, is that the transparency that you're talking
Yeah,
about?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we want to be. We say one of our most important values is having an inclusive culture, where we want people of diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences, diverse ethnicities, diverse gender, of course.
Sure.
And so if you're not going to tell everybody, me included, and all of our people where we are today and deal with reality, well, how are you going to make any progress?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we like to be very open about it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And, and it's, we do not tolerate, racism, anti-Semitism, nothing. You put it right out there, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so here's where we're starting. So don't come apply here if that's your thinking.
Yeah, right.
That's bold, right? That's, you don't see that. And with today's world, where it's always easier to sort of just go along and get along, the more I dug, the more impressed I was.
Yeah.
So when looking at your background, I see you spent your early years overseas.
I did, yeah.
Japan for a while, Europe, right?
China.
Okay. So tell us, how did that prepare you for, what you're doing today in today's world?
Oh, it was hugely important. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. So, I was always. Do you want me to go all the way back real quick? I don't want to take too much time.
I think it's cool. Maybe the highlights from those stops.
Well, my career started in Japan.
Okay.
Like I graduated from college and immediately went to Japan to work.
Okay.
And I was fascinated at the time. So I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I went to school in the mid-80s, to college in the mid-80s. And I grew up in Michigan, not far from Detroit. And so I was an automotive kid. My parents weren't automotive people, but they were doctors. But I was you grew up in Detroit, you're an automotive kid.
Yeah.
And all I heard about every day back then was that Toyota, Honda, and Nissan continued to make higher quality cars at lower cost than GM, Ford, and Chrysler. And it was really interesting to me. I wanted to know, I was a young guy, right? I didn't know anything, right? But I wanted to know what was their secret sauce? Why were they so much better than these companies that were my life in my backyard?
Right.
And that's why I got so interested in Japan. That's why I studied Japanese. I went to Japan right after I graduated, as I just said. I worked there. I learned the Toyota production system before anyone called it the Toyota production system, because that's what they practiced.
Yeah.
And it was really a formative time for me. You can imagine somebody in their 20s spending a few years there and learning the language and learning how they do things and how their quality system works. And that just continued to fuel my interest in global business. So I had the opportunity subsequently, after I had a family, to move to China and live there for 5 years. And then I moved to Europe and lived there for 5 years. And when you're in that situation, not only do you appreciate diversity that the world has to offer, and that there are different opinions. Europeans think very differently than Americans do.
Yeah.
And it's not wrong. It's just an interesting, different opinion and angle that's very helpful when you're trying to run a business. And so I think when you're in that situation and you're managing businesses all over the world, it prepares you for an understanding of the magnitude of decisions that you have to make as you continue to grow and get into a position like I'm in right now.
Right. No, and like you said, it's not right or wrong, it's just different.
Yeah.
And, and I would imagine, I was telling Pat during our prep call, that your experience overseas probably has a lot to do with how you think about diversity and how you think
it definitely does. Absolutely.
How you think about, because you were
Well, when I was in Japan,
You were the white
as
guy.
a 23-year-old kid, there was me and one other guy who were the only non-Japanese people in tens and tens of thousands of people that worked.
Yeah, and how was that? Had to be
And so
crazy.
I kind of understood what it was like to be a minority, because I was the minority.
Yep.
I think that's a good experience.
Yeah, for sure. No, and did it surprise you when you got over there and any of your stops? Were you surprised at maybe efficiency, or surprised at how they looked at strategy, or was there anything that was so markedly different there?
There's no silver bullet to it.
Yeah.
There really isn't. I think that the thing that I learned, the one little thing I learned and appreciated the most, and since I've been working with Japanese companies, is one of the roots of the Toyota production system is empowerment. And they empower people who are at the closest to the action to make the decision. So Toyota's famous for empowering people to stop the production line if they see a quality problem.
Sure.
30 years ago, that would never, ever happen in most American manufacturing plants. People would not be empowered to do that.
Right.
But the empowerment of people is really important in terms of getting the best results for an organization. When you put the decision as close as you can to the actual action, you're probably going to make the right decision a lot more often than you make the wrong decision.
Yeah.
And you have to, and that's how people grow and develop, and is by being empowered to make a decision when they have the information to make it.
Yeah, and that kind of flips the power dynamic, right? From upstairs in the office maybe to on the floor.
Yeah, right.
And so the more I dug and looked at what you guys are doing, the more surprised I was, right? And so, we talked today, we've got some folks here that, have some opinions as to the business you're in. I was surprised, the more I dug, I was surprised to see that, military vehicles is what, 20% of your business?
Yeah,
Maybe
20% of our business today, 80% is commercial businesses.
Yeah.
And the defense segment that we have it'll shrink a little bit, because the businesses that we have with JLG and Pierce Fire Truck, those are growing much more rapidly.
So you'll start to see that come down more.
It'll come down more. Yeah.
I was really interested, you talked about purpose-built.
Yeah.
If I had $1 for every time I saw that, and I would buy you lunch.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Purpose-built and R&D is a big part of what you guys do. Innovation, robotics, AI. Talk a little bit about how those things make those vehicles that are purpose-built safer for the user, right? The end user.
Sure. So, I can start with the postal vehicle. I can start with a number of our vehicles. The postal vehicle is a purpose-built vehicle, developed from in other words, when I say purpose-built vehicle, one way to look at it is you can buy a third-party chassis, which a lot of people do, and then you can build
throw a frame on it.
Something on it so look at a UPS vehicle. UPS is a great company, by the way. The UPS vehicle is a Freightliner chassis, literally with a box strapped on that third-party chassis. It's not designed for the operator that's doing hard work every day to be productive and safe. It works, it's just not designed for the operator.
Right.
We look at the world as to how can we design something from the ground up that's going to give that operator max productivity, max safety, ease of use, intuitive, the whole thing, and the people around the vehicle are just as important as the people in the vehicle. So when we designed the postal vehicle, we designed it with a lot of autonomous functionality. It has auto stop features. So if somebody for some reason isn't seen is in front of that vehicle, it's going to stop automatically. It's easy to get in and out of the vehicle. It's easy to move from the seat to the rear of the vehicle. The step heights were planned specifically for the operator to eliminate slips and falls, because the people are getting in and out of these vehicles a lot of times every single day. So you want to eliminate potential problems. It's an electric vehicle. And the electric vehicle's the propulsion system on an electric vehicle is more efficient and operates with more precision than an internal combustion product does. So that gives the postal carrier silent operation, which is safer. It gives them more precise control of the vehicle, which is safer and more intuitive for them to operate. We design all sorts of things into the vehicles, from both electrification to autonomous functionality to intelligent products features. You know, we design in where you can get real-time data off the vehicle so that whether it's the post office or the driver knows all sorts of data that's happening around them that helps them be productive.
That's pretty cool. I like I said, a lot of surprises as I dug. You know, electric vehicles. You said something's not an EV yet, but you're going to make sure that it becomes an EV.
Yeah.
And so when I think of sort of perception, old school manufacturing, you know, the last thing I think about is that it would be an electric. Any of these vehicles that you're producing would be electric, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got I think you call them
refuse
collection.
vehicles,
I call them garbage trucks. That is not the name to go with these days.
Well, we call them refuse collection vehicles, but yeah, it's a garbage truck.
Yeah. So
Recycling truck as well, right? Same type trucks, recycling.
Cement mixers,
Yeah. Concrete mixers, yeah.
So you've got the first of its kind electric fire truck. Do we have that in operation here in Madison?
You had Madison, Wisconsin got the first electric fire truck manufactured by Pierce. We've had it here for 2.5 years. It's been phenomenal. They love it.
Yep.
It saves an enormous amount of diesel fuel. It has performed almost flawlessly for the first vehicle that we've ever
I was going to
delivered.
say, first thing off the line, you never buy the first one, right? But apparently you guys are learning a lot from its operation, right? And taking that back and pouring it into R&D. Yeah, tons of surprises up and down the product line. I was just, I was like, okay, well it may be an old company, but it's new thinking.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what's going on with electrification from our perspective. So we've known how to do electrification for decades. And when we've done electric vehicles in the past, they've always been very discrete programs because the costs were so expensive that it was either something for the Department of Defense or something for a JLG construction company, but you could never take it and apply it across a lot of categories because it was too costly, so nobody would buy it. Well, what's happened in the recent years is the costs have gotten to a level where it's still more expensive to buy an electric vehicle, but the total cost of ownership outweighs the initial cost that you have to acquire the vehicle. So it's easy for us to show a commercial operator a total cost of ownership benefit, in other words, an economic benefit.
Right.
So now you have the convergence of three things. You have the sustainability, of course, of electrification, which is good. You have the economics, which are good, and the performance is far superior to anything internal combustion system can do.
Yeah.
So those three things have converged, which is why I think we're all seeing a lot more with electrification. Now, we have an advantage over the automotive industry, and you might think it's strange for me to say that. In our markets, it's easier for us to prove an economic or total cost of ownership benefit than it is in the passenger car industry. Because all of us who have passenger cars, we're not driving our vehicle 6 days a week, 8 hours a day, right? We're just not doing that.
Yeah.
But if you look at our applications, whether it's a postal vehicle, a refuse collection vehicle, airport vehicle, these are all operations where there's substantial savings because of the hours of use and the fact that they're going back to the same mobile base station after every shift to get recharged. So the recharging infrastructure's a lot easier than you or I wondering, I'm going to drive down to Chicago. I need to worry about where I can get a recharge.
Right.
They don't have that concern.
Yeah.
So we have we've taken 80,000-pound airport rescue and firefighting vehicles and electrified them. Nobody ever thought that was possible.
Right.
40,000-pound municipal fire trucks. We've got a lot of capability in understanding how to design the battery and the propulsion system into the vehicle to make it work.
That's cool.
And it's an exciting time. We're really, when you look at it, we're on our infancy still, but we've done a lot of development and we've got a lot of orders for electric vehicles.
Yeah, that so combustible engines then are going to come down, I would think.
Gradually.
Trend
It's
down.
not some markets will happen faster than others,
Yep.
right? But gradually, combustion will come down and electric will go up.
Cool.
Yeah.
No,
You'll
that's-
see it happen really fast in the postal market.
Sure.
But I think in, say, the fire truck world, it might take 10 to 20 years.
Right, because you've got units out there that are
You've got thousands and thousands of units that are in the market they'll be replaced when they reach the end of their life.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that was a surprise, and like I said, the more I looked, around every corner was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't expect that, right? It was a surprise, and I think a lot of people will be surprised about how you do your business, right? So, speaking of surprises, what has most surprised you since you've taken the helm?
What has most surprised me? It's a good question. I think, I was taken, there's a number of things I could talk about. So we made a concerted effort, I've talked about the postal contract, to win the postal contract because we believed we could design something that was far superior to the current solution that would be helpful to the postal carrier and the U.S. Postal Service in total. And we won the contract because the U.S. Postal Service recognized that. And I was surprised with the amount of backlash and scrutiny there was over that contract. And the good news about the U.S. Postal Service is, I think for the most part, the majority of people, and certainly the majority of Congress, supports the United States Postal Service. But everybody has a different opinion about how they should operate.
Sure.
So there was an enormous amount of blowback that we had to deal with for about a year on exactly what are we doing with the postal fleet and what's our real capability to do this, and is it electrifying fast enough? And some people didn't think it should electrify very fast at all. There were two different opinions, but we got caught in this swirl of public relations activity that was hard to deal with. I'll be honest, it was hard to deal with.
Yeah. Like you said, you wouldn't have expected that around postal vehicles.
Yeah. There was a lot of passion around it.
No, that's, I guess it impacts all of us, right? Like, we all get the mail, and so I guess everybody sort of has a thought or an opinion.
Yeah.
That's sometimes difficult to be operating in that space.
Right.
So what would you say is the most challenging issues currently for the company? What keeps you up at night?
I think, currently we have, I think there's two things. We're in the middle of a technological transformation. That doesn't happen very often. I mean, the transformation that we're going through from internal combustion to electric is a massive transformation. We haven't seen a transformation like this since the early 1900s.
Industrial age.
Yeah, haven't seen it.
Yeah.
And so when I say that's a challenge, we work with a lot of partners and a lot of suppliers. We do a lot of vertical integration as well. But in a nascent industry, it's difficult to understand who you should be partnered with sometimes and who you shouldn't. It's a little bit cloudy, it's a little bit murky versus our traditional businesses, which are crystal clear in terms of how we should operate.
Right.
So I think that technological transformation is difficult, and we continue to work through it. But I think for all of us, that's something we have to pay attention to, and it's happening with energy creation as well. It's another area where there's a lot of technological transformation going on.
Yeah, which horse are we betting on, right?
Yeah, which horse are we betting on? What's the best solution versus the other solution, and what's the cost of one versus the other? And it's a big evolution. But the other thing I'll say for us, which is probably could be perceived as a good problem. We have a $16 billion backlog. I mean, backlog means orders you've taken which are not yet shipped.
No.
And that's a gigantic backlog for us. And it comes in the form of construction equipment, fire trucks, refuse collection vehicles, I mean, all across our business. And it's pushed up partly because of this transformation that we're going in. We're seeing an enormous amount of onshoring activity because of geopolitical risk. So a lot of that backlog's in the US. We're seeing a lot of infrastructure spending, especially by the federal government with the big bills that have been passed. You can't do any of that infrastructure without our equipment. We're seeing chip plants and electric vehicle production, which is all part of the technological transformation, push up demand. So we have $16 billion of backlog, and we're trying to continue to build capacity.
Right.
So that's, you can say, well, that's a good thing. But when you got customers that need the product and are waiting for the product, it's a hard problem to solve.
Right.
So we're working to improve our current manufacturing plants. We're investing in them. We're investing in new manufacturing plants to be able to address that and continue to drive the growth that we see ahead of us.
Yeah, like you said, it's a good problem to have, but still a problem.
Yeah,
Right. Just follow up, because you said, that kind of backlog. What's the, and I imagine it probably varies over the different products.
It does a little bit, yeah.
What's the turnaround time? Like if I said, John, I need a refuse collection truck,
Well, that you probably get within a year.
Okay.
But for example, I'll tell you in our JLG business, which is a lot of construction equipment, you see it every day. If you don't know what it is, you see it. You just don't know what it is.
Yeah, you drive by it.
But we have almost a year backlog. If we were operating at kind of our sweet spot, we'd have about half that. We'd have about 6 months supply. If you go and order a new municipal fire truck right now, you're going to wait 2.5 years.
Yeah.
That's too long of a backlog.
Yeah.
It's too long to ask your customers to wait 2.5 years.
Right.
It should be maybe 9 months to a year for a municipal fire truck.
Yeah.
So that's why we're working so aggressively to get those backlogs in line with, so we can serve our customers better and they can plan their businesses better.
Yeah, got it. So, thank you, Mike, for the question from the audience. And if you've got any other questions, get them up here. So if you got an unexpected cash infusion of $1 billion, how would you spend it?
Well, that would be that. Now that would be an example of a really good problem to have.
Right? Maybe somebody here has a checkbook that can do that.
We would, maybe I'll answer that by talking about our capital plan.
There you go.
Because we have a very focused capital plan. Oshkosh Corporation has a really strong balance sheet, which means we don't have any, some companies, part of their capital plan is paying down debt.
Right.
We don't have that issue. We have a strong balance sheet. When you look at debt to EBITDA, we have a very low ratio of debt to EBITDA. So we're an investment grade company. The S&P and Moody's, they love us because we're relatively conservatively managed on the balance sheet side, on the financial side.
Yep.
The way we spend our capital is 3 different ways. Okay. So number one, we always return some capital to shareholders in the form of dividends and share buybacks. So about 25% or 30% of our capital, when I say capital, that's incoming cash flow to the company from operations that we have, goes back to shareholders. And a side note, I will tell you, a lot of politicians say that people like me buy shares back to enrich themselves. Nothing could be further from the truth. I hate buying shares back. I want to invest in the company. The investors that we have, and the investors that make up our investment base, are big funds, right? A lot of them are teachers' unions. They are people just like us, right, that own their retirement plans, pension plans. They talk to myself and Pat Davidson, who's in the office, and our CFO all the time. They want us to return capital via both dividends and share buybacks. That's why we do it. Just a message kind of in between this. But so about a quarter of it goes back to shareholders. Okay. The other 75% goes into innovation, new products, new technologies that are going to make a difference in the markets that we serve. So we're investing today a lot in continued advancement of our electrification efforts. We're investing today in a lot in autonomous operations. We have fully autonomous vehicles. We have moments of autonomy that get built into products to make it easier and safer for people to use those products. So we put a lot of money into development. We put a lot of money into modernizing our manufacturing plants. You hear about Industry 4.0 or Manufacturing 4.0, that's kind of the tagline. What that means is that you're investing in essentially connectivity of the manufacturing operation to make it more consistent, reliable, and efficient to produce product. In other words, a simple way to talk about it is you used to walk into a manufacturing plant and see a wrench that you and I have in the drawer in our garage. You don't see that so much anymore. You see DC tools, right? Digitally connected tools that make sure that when that operation is performed, it's done accurately and that it's recorded.
Tolerances, the
whole thing. So we do a lot of investment in our manufacturing plants. We expand capacity as well. We're building a new plant in Tennessee right now. We're building a new plant in South Carolina right now. We're expanding a plant in Appleton, Wisconsin right now. We're repurposing a plant in Oshkosh, Wisconsin right now. So a lot of money goes into that. And then the other area where our capital goes is acquisitions. You know, we acquire for technological reasons, and we acquire because we see a category that's underserved and we think we can serve it better with a better solution, which I talked about earlier. That's where our capital goes. So if somebody dropped $1 billion on us, it would probably be split up.
It sounds like you've already spent it. You just spent it all.
Right.
You may have overspent it. Yeah. Can we get 1.5?
Yeah.
Well, I've got a stack of questions for you. And some of your handwriting, we need to talk about this. I don't know who it is, but if it's gibberish, which is kind of like mine, then I can't read it, then I may skip over it. So we hear about concerns that elements required to build batteries for electric vehicles will become scarce. So the things that make that happen, limited by controls by China. How concerned are you about the future ability or inability to acquire electric batteries or materials to make electric batteries?
I'm not very concerned about the availability of materials to produce, so that's primarily lithium, and some other materials that go into them. I am concerned about the responsibility of how lithium is mined. I think that needs to be paid very close attention to, where it's mined in a responsible way and not in an environmentally unfriendly way. You know, we used to say the same thing about oil, right? Well, I'll say the same thing about lithium. It's got to be done in a responsible way. I'm not so concerned about the availability of lithium. You know, the information that we have right now tells us that when we make a lithium-ion battery, that at the end of its life, most of it is recyclable and able to be put back into a brand new battery again. That's very good news, right? So I'm not so concerned about that. I am a little bit concerned about, you know, when you make a lithium-ion battery, there's 3 components to it. There's the cell, and the cell's primarily oligopolistic. LG is a big supplier of cells, Korean company, for example. Then there's a module, and then there's the packaging. And the packaging is really about how is it built into the structure of the vehicle you're making. So we typically work mostly on the packaging, and then we work with partners and suppliers on the module and at the cell level. And so where we try to pay very close attention is that you have to have a certain level of scale to get the best cost down to the cell level. And so we work hard to make sure we've got enough scale where we can get the best cost that we need for our customers at the cell level. And then, you know, when I said earlier, it's hard to navigate a nascent environment. At the module level, there's a lot of shifting and companies coming in and companies leaving and companies that are doing great work and then they go bankrupt because of how nascent the industry is. So we pay a lot of attention to that and making sure that we're partnering with the right businesses.
Thank you. No, good question. Do you see the possibility of regaining the SLTV contract in the future?
JLTV.
Or sorry,
I think he means.
JLTV, yeah.
Yeah, JLTV is Joint Light Tactical Wheeled Vehicle. It's our biggest program today. It's all Oshkosh design, proprietary technology, and the Department of Defense gave that business to a competitor a few months ago.
The Indiana folks, right?
Yeah, the Indiana folks.
We don't like them, by the way.
And it was, and just to make sure everyone knows what happened, the only reason we did not win that is because we were not willing to supply the product at zero margin. I mean, it's just not our business.
Right.
When
It shouldn't be anybody's
when we
business.
make an investment, our investors, again, remind you who our investors are: teachers, unions, people like you and me. They expect a return on their investment. So we can't take a big program like that and say we're going to supply it at zero margin. That's purely why we didn't win it. Now I'll tell you what's going on in the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense is squeezing our product. We make tactical wheeled vehicles. They're made to protect people. They're in dangerous situations. And we make big equipment that moves equipment around safely and efficiently. That's what we do for the Department of Defense. We're not a weapons manufacturer. We're a vehicle manufacturer that protects people and equipment. But the DoD has constraints just like everybody else. They're putting all of their investment in aerospace and Navy, and they're squeezing things like the tactical wheeled vehicle. That's why they put so much pressure on the resource of that program. It's just the reality of it. I can't do anything about it. I don't feel sorry for myself. You win some, you lose some. We're a growing company. We've got lots of opportunity for growth, and we will continue to grow in the future.
Right. Well, they got to spend it somewhere. They've chosen to spend it elsewhere. And then I think this is an add-on to the same question. Can you speak to Oshkosh, your initiatives and strategies around developing and retaining workforce?
Yeah.
This is followed up by it's the follow-up to the JLTV, but I know you're still producing those vehicles through 24, correct? Yeah, through 24. And we'll still build the JLTV into the indefinite future. We just won't have the primary contract from the DoD to do the vehicle. Okay. That's where most of the volume is. So we'll still do JLTVs for the DoD. They go into specialty applications. We still do those vehicles for allied countries that order them from us. We just won't have the big DoD contract. But back to the people front. I think that it's a great point. I think that the availability of people in our economy is constricting growth. I think it's at every level. And I think it's the root of the supply chain disruption that we all have been in the past couple of years, is there, when you look into the base of the economy, there's not enough people to do all the work that there is. So when, we have 4,000 direct suppliers and many, many more thousand that are tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 suppliers. And you have a lot of companies that have a hard time staffing a second shift, a third shift, getting people to work overtime on the weekend. These are things that we used to take for granted 10 years ago. Right. Everybody wanted to work overtime because you get paid a lot more to work overtime. Right. Time and a half. Or it was easy to staff a second shift because you got more volume from your customer. It's not easy to do that anymore. We're in a different climate and a different environment. And so we can typically get the people that we need because we're a big company and we pay really good wages. We have great benefits. Great culture. People want to work for us. We're considered an employer of choice, no matter where you go. Whether you work in production or you're a PhD in engineering, people, they want to work for a big Fortune 500 company. But I think it's a problem with a lot of smaller businesses in the economy, and we need to continue to pay attention to it. I set aside that question not because of the handwriting, because it's actually pretty good, but it was the question about supply chain, right? You just addressed it in your answer. How are you doing with supplier diversity? What's your average MBE, which is minority business enterprise, utilization? Do you look at those sort of things when you look at supplier diversity? We do, absolutely. We look at minority-owned suppliers, those types of metrics. I actually don't know what it is off the top of my head, but
we pay very close attention to that, along with the other diversity metrics that we follow. We have a global supply chain. We have most of our supplies in the United States, but we have a lot of supply from Mexico. We have a lot of supply from Canada. A lot of supply from Asia. From China to Korea to other countries in Asia. We have a lot of supply that comes in from Europe. What we really have to do is we have to make sure that we have the best supplier to serve our needs and that is going to be reliable for us.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the starting point. And then we look at, okay, what are the other statistics we need to be paying attention to in terms of minority-owned or female-owned businesses, things like that.
Yep. First and foremost is the standard at which you need to operate, right? For the purpose built. But then I always, whenever hiring, I always ask 4 questions. 1, can they do the job? 2, do they want to be here?
Yeah.
3, can we afford them?
Yeah.
And then the 4th is, do they add something to our culture that we don't have or don't have enough of?
Yeah.
Right? So you got to answer the first 3 questions first.
Yeah.
So are you creating your own, or are you creating/using your own technology around the batteries in the EV vehicles? You said you guys do some proprietary stuff software-wise?
Yeah.
And so, or do you source it from somewhere?
Both. Okay. We source the, I told you we source the cells, we source the modules. We do a lot of software internally. EVs is a huge software component to making an EV work efficiently. Yeah. And we do internal software development, and we do software development with partners. Okay. And some of those are household name type companies. There's there's an e-drive on some of our vehicles. If you know what an e-drive is, instead of having an engine with axles, an e-drive is there's an electric motor right on the axle that drives the wheels. So some of those we source, but we also have some vehicles like the Pierce electric fire truck, which has what's called an EMIVT on it, which is completely designed by us and a partner in our product. And that's electromechanical infinitely variable transmission. Now,
I was going to guess that.
You don't need to remember that, but it's a very innovative transmission in that it can take both the impulse from a mechanical internal rotation of an internal combustion engine, or it can take the electrical input from a battery and drive the exact same propulsion system on board. And it has to, when you're looking at a fire truck, these are $1 million+ vehicles. They're very complicated. There's a lot of systems on it. It can drive the whole thing. And why that's important is, you could talk to anyone you want. The fire chief here in Madison's a good place to start. There's an internal combustion engine on the electric fire truck. They never turn it on. It's there for backup purposes only, because what they worry about, they know they can never get to a scene, maybe it's a fire, and they're pumping water for 6-8 hours. They cannot get to a situation where they run out of battery power. Yeah. So we designed that EMIVT transmission so that they had peace of mind knowing if they ever got into that situation and had to have power, that internal combustion engine could kick on and run the truck seamlessly without interruption. Yeah. Now, Madison's had the electric vehicle in service for 2.5 years. I think it's at least 2.5 years, might be 3, but 2.5 years. They have never turned it on. So it operates on full electric propulsion.
Right. But it
has to be there for emergency purposes. Yeah. That's why we designed the EMIVT.
Purpose built.
So some of it's to answer the question, some of it is internal. A lot of it's sourced though with partners.
Yep. Yeah, I imagine that the one you just described in the fire truck, that's not, you can't get that off the shelf.
No, no, you cannot. And it's got our patents all over it.
Right,
so.
Right. No, that's good. That's good. Let's see. You talked about AI a little bit, so I'm gonna go to this last question. Future business with China that's the title of this question. This question has a title. Yeah. Future business with China. Does Oshkosh Corporation view China as still being able to adopt to our country's values and become more like us versus being an adversary? This is a big question given the summit that just happened.
It's hard to answer that question. What I can say is China is a very big part of the global economy, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
They're a very big part of it. And I hope it doesn't go fully to the latter of the question, meaning an adversary. I think it's, we got to keep it somewhere in the middle. I don't know this. I don't know that we're ever going to get China to fully get on board with the values of our country. I don't know that would ever happen. But I'd like us to keep it somewhere in the middle, because I don't like to imagine a world where we, or the West, so to speak, has to separate itself from China. I think that's going to be a very bad world to live in. Everyone's standard of living will drop. The economy functions very efficiently with China as part of it. So I'm hoping that cooler heads prevail, and we can stay at least have some kind of relationship with China, because I just think it's a big part of the global economy.
Yeah,
now, I don't know. Maybe you could think I'm too utopian. I don't know, but
no. I mean, it's almost inextricable, right? Could we even go it alone? At this point. So I'm with you. I hope we find a way to, to work together, and to maybe they come a little bit this way, and we are a little understanding of how they operate, so that we can all continue to operate. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So we spend a little time, you told us how you'd spend your $1 billion, so congratulations on that. But we also try to spend a little time getting to know our guests. So as people, right? We've heard about the company and you as a professional, but as a person, what do you do when you're not running the Oshkosh Corporation?
So what do I do? Well, I'll tell you about my family. I'm married. I've been married for almost 27 years. I have 3 kids. They're all adults in their 20s, and they're all fantastic. There's nothing better in life than having your kids be happy as adults. Right. I mean, that to me is fantastic, right? Such a great joy when your kids are doing well. They're all doing their thing. And happy. Yeah. So what do? I'm a big downhill skier, big cross-country skier. I've been downhill skiing since I was 5 years old, so I'm 58 now. Okay. So it's a lot of years of downhill skiing. Yeah, you're still doing it, huh? And my kids love to downhill ski, and so it's a lot of the quality time I spend with my kids, is skiing, and we talk a lot on the chairlift, and we have fun together. I'm a big runner. I love to jog. It's part of my, I think everybody needs some sort of an outlet. Okay. My daily outlet is running. It's a meditation for me, and I love to do it. Okay. I'm a big boater. That may not be a surprise if anybody knows. I was the president of Mercury Marine for a long time. Right. We didn't even get into that. Which is the, largest marine propulsion company in the world, based right here in Wisconsin. And, so that gets into your blood when you do that for a long time. So my family and I are all big boaters. So those are the types of things that I do in my free time. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. I'm getting the bum's rush here, so I'm going to get you out of here on this question. Grew up in the Detroit area, correct? Yep. Okay, so Lions fan, Packers fan? Lions, all the way. All right, good man. Yeah. Sorry, I apologize. I go to a lot of Packer games, right? Yeah. Oh, sure. And business. Yeah. When you grow up and your dad takes you to a Lions game at least once a year. Yeah. When you're a kid, that gets into your blood. Yeah. And it doesn't matter that they haven't been good forever. But they're good now. But now it's like now they're 7-2, and I'm like the happiest guy in the world. But so anyway, when I went, I go to Green Bay games a lot, and I always root for Green Bay, right? Unless they're playing the Lions. So when we played at Lambeau Field earlier this year, I showed up in my Barry Sanders jersey. Good man. I will tell you that. You're a good man. You're talking to a Chicago native, and so I catch a lot of grief. Yeah. Everybody knows I'm a Bears fan. Yeah. Some people still talk to me. Yeah. But the Bears play the Lions this weekend, so I'll email you next week. Okay, good. All right.
Join me in thanking John for coming in.